Hi and welcome back. I know this isn't the funnest part of the course, and most of these rules will be intuitive to you, but it is important to bring them up, because on an exam you may have questions about them, and they're usually very easy questions, so you don't want to miss any points by not knowing the definitions of these terms. Most of the operations in algebra fall under one of these rules. You have commutative property of both addition and multiplication, then the associative property of addition and multiplication. You have the distributive property, the additive identity property, the multiplicative identity property, additive inverse property, and multiplicative inverse property. Let's take a look at a couple of examples along with some mnemonics that will help you memorize which is which. When you think about commutative properties, whether it's addition or multiplication, you can generally think of two terms. As you can see here, A and B are some terms, and the commutative property of addition says that whether you add B to A or A to B, you'll get the same answer. The easiest way to remember this is that order doesn't matter when dealing with two terms. If you can remember that, then you'll have a good handle on the commutative property of addition. Just like commutative property of addition, there's a commutative property of multiplication. And basically that says that for any two numbers, the order in which you multiply them together doesn't matter. For two numbers A and B, you can say A times B, and the result of that will be the same as if you multiplied B times A. Again, since this is commutative property, a good way to remember it is that order doesn't matter when dealing with two terms. It's just in this case, we're multiplying instead of adding. When you think of associative property of addition, you're generally dealing with more than two terms. So a good way to memorize this is that order doesn't matter when dealing with multiple terms. For three numbers A, B, and C, you can add A and B together, then add C to them, and you'll get the same result as if you took A and then added B plus C to that. That brings us to the associative property of multiplication. Again, a good way to remember this is that order doesn't matter when dealing with multiple terms. For three numbers A, B, and C, you can multiply A and B together, then multiply C, and you'll get the same answer as if you multiply A to the product of B times C. The distributive property is a little easier to remember, because when you think about distributing something, you think about handing it out. In the case here, for three numbers A, B, and C, you can multiply A times B plus A times C, and you'll get the same thing as if you add B and C times A. Now comes a few of the easier rules. The additive identity property says that for any number A, if you add 0 to that, the result will be A. In this example, we've added 0 to the number 4. 4 plus 0 is equal to 4. If you want to memorize that in words, you would say that 0 added to any number is equal to that number. We also have a multiplicative identity property, and that basically just says that any number multiplied by 1, or 1 multiplied by any number, equals that number. Here we had the example of 2 times 1, which is equal to 1 times 2. Both of them are equal to 2. Next, we have the additive inverse property. In math, when you hear the term inverse, a lot of people describe these as undoing operations. And if you look at this example, it makes sense. If you take any number and add its negative to it, the answer you get will be 0. In this example, 4 plus negative 4 is equal to 0. And lastly, we have the multiplicative inverse property, which basically says that any number divided by itself will equal 1. In this example, we have 5 times 1/5, which is the same thing as saying 5 divided by 5 is equal to 1. And that's it for the basic rules of algebra. Please spend some time with the quiz problems on this topic. As stated, a lot of times on exams when you get these questions, they're easy points, so you don't want to miss them. Let's go ahead and take a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about the different types of numbers that you'll be dealing with in algebra.